Under the copper hush of evening, the prairie breathed in long, unbroken sighs. Grass swayed like tired pilgrims, their shadows stretching across the earth, as if clinging to the last of daylight. A horse carried two riders across that boundless sea, one a giant cowboy with shoulders like carved oak, the other a young woman whose hands were bound, her gaze sharp as a hawk's. His name was Jack Callahan, though men in nearby towns called him Stone, for his face gave nothing away. The woman was Nokomi's Greyhawk, proud in her silence, though a captive. The leather rope at her wrists could not restrain the dignity in her spine, nor the defiance in her dark, steady eyes. Jack told himself she was an enemy, yet even as the reins cut against his palm, a splinter of doubt wormed its way into his chest. The cabin appeared at the edge of the pines, weatherwood standing like an old sentinel against the night. Smoke curled from the chimney, thin and lonely. Jack swung down from his horse and lifted Nokomi's to the ground, her feet brushing the soil with a grace that startled him. He unbound her hands but kept his rifle nearby, a barrier between them stronger than rope. She looked about the cabin, its rough beams, its porch worn by years of storms, with neither fear nor admiration, only measured calm. The silence between them was heavier than words, and Jack found himself choking on it. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar smoke and old grief. The table bore scars of knives, the hearth was dark with ash. He motioned for her to sit, but she stood instead, her eyes roaming the walls as though mapping his history. That night, as rain began to tap the roof like hesitant fingers, Jack lay on his cot staring at the ceiling. Across the room, Nokomi's lay with her back to him, her breathing steady as the fall of rain. He tried to recall the last time another soul had filled the cabin with such presence. Once, laughter had rung through these walls, his mother's songs, his father's stories, the chatter of siblings, but that had ended in fire and gunfire when bandits had come. He clenched his jaw, forcing the memories back into the pit where they belonged. Still, when he closed his eyes, he did not see flames. He saw her face, proud and untamed, her hair spilling across the rough blanket like a river of night. Why should a stranger's presence haunt him more than his own ghosts? Days passed in silence, their routines circling each other like wary animals. Jack hunted deer in the hills, brought back meat, and laid food before her without ceremony. She would not eat at first, her defiance sharp as barbed wire. But hunger broke pride slowly, and one morning, he found the plate emptied. She did not thank him, yet something in his chest loosened at the sight. That evening, he stepped onto the porch to see her brushing her long black hair, each stroke deliberate, the strands catching what little sun remained. For a moment, he could not move, struck by the strange beauty of so simple an act. He turned quickly away, angry at himself for caring, but the image clung to him like burrs. He had once thought his heart frozen beyond all thaw. Why did it ache now? The storm came fierce one night, wind battering the shutters, rain pouring through the broken seam in the roof. Water dripped steadily near where Nokomi's lay. Jack watched her pull her blanket tight, her jaw clenched against the cold. Something moved in him then, something stubborn and unyielding, yet he found himself carrying his own blanket across the room. He set it down beside her without meeting her eyes. "Don't catch cold," he muttered, his voice rasping as though it had forgotten gentleness. She did not answer in English. Instead, she whispered words in her own tongue, soft as a prayer. He did not know their meaning, but the sound pressed against his heart like a seed finding soil. He lay awake the rest of the night, listening to the rain and wondering what he had just planted inside himself. By morning, she followed him into the barn. Jack tensed, his hand brushing the revolver at his hip, but she made no move toward him. Instead, she touched the flank of his horse, murmuring something in low tones. The animal calmed beneath her hand, and Jack felt a curious pang of respect. Without speaking, she began to help, fetching water, smoothing the mare's mane, moving in rhythm beside him. The barn filled with dust motes that swirled in shafts of light, the air rich with hay and leather. Jack felt a warmth bloom that had nothing to do with the sun. Each glance they exchanged seemed to weave an invisible thread between them, fragile yet undeniable. When she began to hum a melody, low and haunting, Jack froze. His mother had sung like that once, years ago, as she kneaded bread in the kitchen. He had not heard tenderness in so long that the sound nearly broke him. How could a woman he called enemy feel more familiar than his own blood? The town proved less forgiving. When Jack rode in with Nokomis one morning, Sheriff Eli Turner's eyes narrowed. Whispers rose from the townsfolk: savage, enemy, curse. Their words cut sharper than knives. Jack felt shame coil inside him, though his back stayed straight, his voice even. He bought supplies, ignoring the stares, shielding Nokomis with his broad shoulders. Still, their judgment followed like a shadow, whispering that love between them was impossible, dangerous, doomed. Yet as they rode back through the open fields, Jack caught Nokomis's profile against the sky, her chin high, her gaze unbroken. He wondered how she bore their scorn with such quiet strength, and a dangerous thought crept into him. Perhaps she was not his prisoner but the only freedom he would ever know. One evening, as dusk bled into indigo, Nokomis cut her hand on the edge of a tin while preparing food. Jack's body moved before thought. He grasped her slender hand in his own, binding the wound with rough precision. His calloused fingers trembled against her skin. Their eyes met, and for the first time, silence did not divide but bind them. The warmth of her hand in his shattered something within him, something he had sworn would never break again. He pulled away quickly, ashamed, retreating into the armor he had worn so long. Yet that night, as he lay awake, he found himself flexing his fingers, as if they still remembered her touch. Slowly, the cabin became a home again. Each dawn, he left a steaming cup of coffee for her on the table. Each evening, she stitched his torn shirts with care. By the fire, they shared bread, shoulders brushing, silence softening into companionship. In the barn, their movements grew less cautious, more like a dance rehearsed 1,000 times. Once, he wound the old phonograph, and they swayed clumsily to its crackling tune. Laughter spilled out of him, startled and raw, and her smile lit the dim barn brighter than lanterns. He fought the feelings rising inside, the grief whispering that love would only end in loss. Yet one star-washed night, she took his hand and pressed it against her chest, where her heart beat strong and steady. "Still alive," she whispered. He felt tears sting his eyes, for in her words he heard his own salvation. The valley did not grant them peace for long. Smoke rose one dawn on the far ridge, black and cruel, and Jack knew before he saw the riders who they were. The bandits had returned, the same men who had burned his family from this world. Fury clenched his throat, fear clawed his chest. He loaded his rifle, every motion sharp with memory. Nokomis stepped beside him, eyes steady. "Together," she said, "no more, no less." He tried to tell her to hide, but the words died against her gaze. The night flared with gunfire. Bullets shattered the silence, flames devoured the barn. Jack fought like a man possessed, every shot a cry from the grave, every strike a vow. Beside him, Nokomis moved with fearless grace, saving him when he faltered, her courage a shield stronger than steel. The battle raged, smoke thick as sorrow, until the last of the bandits fell silent upon the earth. Jack stood trembling, chest heaving, the fire's glow painting his tears. For the first time, grief lifted its weight. He was not alone. They wed beneath the judgmental gaze of the town, Sheriff Eli presiding with reluctant solemnity. Whispers followed, yet Jack's voice did not waver when he spoke his vow. "She is my heart, my home." He looked only at Nokomis, and she at him, their hands bound not by rope but by choice. Seasons turned. The cabin filled with softer sounds, Nokomis's humming as she cradled their newborn daughter, Lily. Jack's laughter, no longer startled but sure. The air smelled of bread baking, of pine smoke, of a life rebuilt from ashes. At night, Jack sat by the cradle, watching his wife and child, his heart unrecognizable from the stone it once was. He whispered into the darkness, not to ghosts but to the living. Love was never an illusion. It was waiting all along for her. And if one listens closely, the prairie still carries their story on its wind. A tale of a hardened cowboy and a captive woman, bound first by mistrust, then by trust, and at last by love. Perhaps the lesson lies there, in the patient grace of small gestures that break stone where force never could. If you feel lost beneath judgment's shadow, scarred by old wounds, remember their story. Love comes softly, like dawn after storm, and when it does, it remakes the world entire. And who can say? Perhaps even now, it waits closer than you think, ready to take your hand in the quiet dark.